Afrofish OG. What is good, everyone? It's Taylor from AfrofishOG here, and today we are going through a different kind of video. I personally love Ratchet and Clank. I actually been playing Rift Apart. It's a really solid game. So today I was going to look at, you know what, we'll check out someone out here. This guy is known as RC Gameplays, which I've never done a reaction to him before, but he did his 5 best weapons from Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, so I was thinking, hell yeah, let's get it on. So be sure to check down all of my links down below in the descriptions. And with all that being said and all that jazz out of the way, let's get right into this video.
Well, let's get into this because I know why you guys are here. Here are 5 weapons I chose as my favorite or best in the Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Feel free to tell me which.
So we're going to jump right into it. So I don't mind introductions, but we're going to get right into the video as quickly as possible.
Ones you prefer and why. This is my list, so don't take it too serious. Weapons that I love were left out of this top 5. However, just about making it, we have the Ricochet, which we get in Sargasso for 6.
The Ricochet. Okay. We'll see what he has to say, and then I'll give my thoughts on that.
6,500 bolts. This ranged weapon shoots out a flying pinball that can hit the same or several enemies multiple times with one single shot. This weapon builds up from what we saw with the chopper in Ratchet and Clank 2 and the buzz blades in previous games, as the current technology allows this pinball to ricochet around at will. When the game was announced as a PS5 exclusive, the developers made a huge deal out of the weapon since it utilizes the PS5's DualSense trigger so well, as you can press the R2 multiple times to repeatedly hit enemies, retreating the pinball into the gun once it runs out of ammo, making it
It is definitely useful in those regards.
the only one in the series to do so. The Ricochet is one of my favorite weapons because it's so unique and fun to use. The colorful hits on enemies, the sound the remote makes with each strike, and even the weapon's design is cool. Reminiscent of the suck cannon, one of my favorite weapons in gaming. You can also cause your shots to hit your target in perfect rhythm with the aid of the PS5 controller audio for added damage, promoting a skill gap, which is always a nice inclusion, as usually RNC weapons tend to be straightforward and somewhat mindless to use in fights. Upgrading this weapon to the Ricochet not only improves the pinball's damage, but it also increases that damage exponentially with each ricochet strike. Unfortunately, at least for me, this ricochet gimmick gets old very fast and is not as satisfying as the game went along, contrary to other weapons on this list, which is why I placed it at number 5 despite my love for it. Still, it is one of a kind weapon that I always look forward to using.
Alright, so I'm going to say, the Ricochet being number 5, I don't think I put it in my top 5 personally, but that's also because of the fact that it is probably the most unique weapon out of the Rift Apart, in my opinion, but I don't think it's that good. But I digress. But I respect it. You know what I mean? I respect it. So let's see what he's got for the rest of them.
In each and every playthrough. Now, number 4 is a weapon I was not expecting to like as much as I did, due to its simplicity. Well, as simple as a weapon from a AAA.
It's the wrench.
Game can be, at least. For 35,000 bolts, the Black Hole Storm becomes quite basically a Gatling gun in your hands, where pressing the R2 button slightly powers up this weapon,
Love this gun.
spinning the wheelbarrow before unleashing bullets as you hold down the R2. As you continuously fire, the weapon overheats and has to cool down in order to use again, negotiating a degree of risk-reward with such a powerful weapon. It does absolutely destroy enemies, making it the game's highest damage output weapon, even greater than the Rhino. Yet the lack of accuracy is also one of its down points, as trying to fire against enemies far away will become an annoying endeavor, unless you are fighting off bosses or larger enemies. Then use it at will, of course. Not only does it obliterate your foes, but it also looks classy while you're at it. The neon purple look has such a vibrant color that nicely blends in with the game's aesthetics. The slowly rotating Gatling gun and the neon blast are also a nice complement. I mean, any excuse to talk about how gorgeous this game is. It upgrades into the Black Hole Vortex, which...
This game is actually super pretty. If you've never played, like, this Ratchet and Clank, or if you played previous ones, this one will blow you away, just with its visuals alone.
Which brings the added bonus of exploding enemies as soon as they are riddled with your bullets. Yet, no matter what, I love this weapon so much, and it's a shame that we have to wait until practically the last couple of levels to acquire it. And number...
So I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I'm really happy you put the Black Storm generator, oh my god, the machine gun back on there. I'm not very good with the words, I guess, today, but I'm happy that he put it on there. I really am. I love the sound of if you hold the left trigger, you can hear it revving up. And then you press right trigger and it just goes all out. It is really cool for being like a machine gun. And overall, it's probably, yeah, I'd probably put it at like Probably 3 on my list. Not in terms of the strongest, but just like in ones that I favor. Probably 2 or 3.
Number 3, for 4,000 bolts, we have an auxiliary weapon that basically does all the work for us. That being the Topiary Sprinkler. Yes, I know that I praised the last 2 weapons in terms of their skill gap and how they can be used efficiently by players that are invested in them, but who doesn't love sprinklers that help you kill all the annoying pests you have to deal with in the game while tending to other foes, freezing them in time as grass sculptures, or as normal people say, bushes. Another weapon reminiscent of one of my favorites from the Future trilogy, the Nano Swarmers. The Topiary Sprinkler is a perfect weapon for dealing with crowds of enemies, morphing them into bushes, eventually reducing the crazed number of enemies running towards you, which in this game is a must, as these are the most aggressive enemies in the series. A huge plus is that upgrading the Sprinkler into the Toxiary Sprinkler deals damage to enemies over time, providing a perfect balance whenever entering a battle, with top animations, usefulness, and a great bit of damage. And to be fair, I am a sucker for these types of weapons that fight alongside you and don't talk back, and just do what they are told so we can continue on the journey. And yes, that is partially why Mr. Fungi is not in my top 5, but anyways, the Topiary Sprinkler just manages into the...
So, I'm going to be honest, I would probably put this as number 2. If I had like a solid one, probably number 2. Just because this weapon is so good. It's gotten me not just out of jams, but the fact that it can also increase the damage for when it comes to bosses is so useful. It's gotten me out of so much, and honestly, when you're playing like Ratchet or Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, this weapon is almost an absolute must because of how aggressive the enemies are and how just easily they can swarm you. So absolutely, I'm glad that he talked about this, because this one's crazy.
The top 3. So both my number 1 and 2 may come as a surprise even to myself, as I wasn't expecting to like these as much as I did, or how indecisive I would be toward which one I preferred best. But for 17,500 bolts, the Void Repulsor has to be up there as...
Really? The Void Repulsor? Okay.
one of the best Ratchet and Clank weapons. While it is somewhat situational, you cannot deny its appeal. Who in their right mind thought about making a shotgun that turns into a shield, or more correctly, a shield that rips apart as shotgun cartridges would? Like, who comes up with these? While protecting yourself, you can also be attacking your enemies if you just time it right, pulling onto the L2 to form the shield and then shattering with the R2. I believe it's probably the perfect mix between attack and defense in a weapon, and definitely one of the best, if not the best, defense-oriented weapon in the whole Ratchet and Clank series. And yes, I know there's like 3 or 4 in the series, but still. Better yet, there is no proximity damage, meaning that any hit you have on the enemy will have the same damage output, contrary to other weapons. The only downfall is that using the weapon as a shotgun does mean it soon runs out of ammunition, especially if you're constantly barraged by your opponents. As the shield runs out, the more damage it receives. But then again, that's where the upgrades come in. Upgrading the Void Repulsor into the Void Reactor allows for more Raritanian upgrades on ammo and damage, but also allows to reflect shots from opposing enemies right back at them with the shotgun blast, providing a satisfying sensation as you feel the PS5 remote haptic feedback vibrate for your palms until its inevitable release with the shotgun blast. Before heading on to the number 1, I would like to ask you kind people to subscribe if you haven't already.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with y'all. I think that I've just been thinking of the Void Repulsor wrong. I've been looking at it as just like a shield. Yeah, it has the little repulse move, but it's just nothing that fancy. But maybe I'm just thinking about it wrong. Maybe I'm thinking like it's, you know, a shield and a shotgun at the same time. Yeah, I don't know why I haven't... I guess I never really used it that much. Interesting.
And while I present you my honorable mentions, maybe you guys could predict what I chose as my favorite weapon. So unfortunately, just missing out on the top 5, we have the Burst Pistol, arguably one of the best base pistols in the entire series, well complemented by the haptic feedback trigger feature on the PS5 remote. Another pistol-like weapon that I loved but just missed out on the top 5 is the Lightning Rod. The perfect
I think the Lightning Rod is better than the Burst Pistol.
Combination of what came before, like the Tesla coil in Ratchet & Clank 3, just a great and satisfying shock weapon. Finally, the Cold Snap is another weapon that builds on previous freezing guns in Ratchet's arsenal, in which Raritanium upgrades makes this weapon top tier with its exploding icicles. So, did you figure out what...
I'd say that was number 1. Or not number 1, but I think it's, in terms of the strongest, I'd put the strongest.
top weapon was. There were 21 total weapons, including all base weapons as well as DLC weapons like the bouncer and pixelizer. And no, I did not like the bouncer at all, but that's a discussion for another video. Also, once again, my favorite weapon is not the rhino, and yes, I did love the Easter eggs, but it wasn't enough and would require a video on its own to explain why it's just not as satisfying as the other weapons in the series. Regardless, for my one and only best and favorite tool in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, I went with the ultimate risk-reward weapon in the game, the Enforcer. And probably most of you will find this extremely unwarranted, especially for such an early game for a mere 1,250 bolts. I mean, most people would look at it as just another mere shotgun, but it's so fun to use and it's so powerful as well. Slightly pressing the R2 button releases a single shotgun blast, while holding it down all the way gets a double shotgun shot. This is especially satisfying when you take into account the sound the gun makes as you shoot, and the pressure from the PS5 haptic triggers. Getting up close and personal with your enemies leads to devastating damage, but it also leaves you vulnerable to a hitback. It kind of reminds me of one of my favorite weapons in the series, the Razor Claws, which I also included in another top 5 RNC weapons ranking, as you can see in the corner of this video. It's truly exhilarating to use this weapon, trying to defeat your foes while at the edge of death, when you never know whether you'll have enough time to deliver a single blast, or if you should go for the double blast for greater power. It is also further complicated by the upgrade into the Executor, whereas once you had 1 or 2 shots with the R2
Oh my god, the Executor is so good.
trigger, now you have 2 or 4. Further rare Raritanium upgrades will see this weapon knocking back enemies with every shot within melee distance and improving its greatest shortcoming, range. Like with other weapons in Rift Apart, this one is again magnificently designed, both in gameplay and aesthetic. The round of orange neon particles blasting away at your enemies' hopes and dreams, and the rotating aspect of the gun as it blasts, it's simply marvelous. I can't praise it enough, and I hope that I'm not the only one that feels that way about this gun and the rest of the weapons in my top 5 list. But anyways, I'd love to hear what you guys think is an underrated weapon that I didn't mention, and discuss with me in the comments why I'm completely wrong, because I know I will be. Once again, I'd like to remind you all that this is my own opinion and it may vary drastically with you guys, but hopefully we can start.
Oh my gosh, I really love this video. No, I would have some changes, obviously, as I talked about, but overall, I really enjoyed this. I can always bullshit when it comes to Ratchet & Clank, so wow. Yeah, definitely, that was great. That was great. So, kudos to RC Gameplays. If you have not subscribed to him, please do, because I just did. And for certain, like, be sure to check out his other videos as well. Huge shout out, man. Congrats. This was a really good video. Alrighty, everyone. I appreciate you all watching. Be sure, like I said, in the links below, check out my TikTok, all that other good stuff. And with all that being said, I'm Taylor from AfroFishOG, and I'll catch you all in the next one.